Hi, welcome back to the Infertile Mama channel. My name is Elena Quiros, and I'm really glad that you stopped by. I'm actually going to talk today about something that you don't hear of very often. It's something that I experienced myself early in my marriage, and it's something that I've never really talked about because it was hard for me at the time, and I kind of wanted to just forget about it. And it's called spontaneous abortion. And it happens very often and frequently. And I don't know the percentages, but I did read an article, a medical journal, that said 1 in 5 pregnancies ends up in a spontaneous abortion. And mothers don't even know that they were pregnant because it's so early into the pregnancy. So it's just a late period as far as they're concerned. And if it's not documented, I don't know how they know those numbers, but they also said that for every pregnancy, there is a spontaneous abortion. So it's just so common. And I happened to have one early in my marriage that the only reason I knew about it, and I'll tell you a little bit about that course of events. My husband, we were kind of at the stage, we were far enough into our marriage where we realized we just weren't ready for children as far as we were financially or emotionally even. And we weren't doing taking any preventative measures because we figured we wanted to have a family and we'd make ourselves ready for when the time came, because you never really are ready. But we were kind of, well, my husband more so than me, we're kind of grateful for the fact that I hadn't gotten pregnant yet. I always wanted to be, and I think for all the wrong reasons. I think I wanted to be pregnant just to be for the sake of being pregnant because everyone of my peers was. And I think I didn't really take into consideration the life change it would be for the actual baby to arrive and to be a real mom. I think I wanted to experience the glory of pregnancy, which isn't all glory. Now in retrospect, I'm really grateful that I didn't have to go through pregnancy. It looks like, it just through a full-term pregnancy just seems to really wear on the body and that kind of thing. So for me, it probably was better that I didn't have to go through that. But early in our marriage, during this time, my husband had to travel for his job and he went to Oklahoma. And at the time we had moved from our hometown where we grew up with our families, and we moved 50 miles north into a really small town. And it was good for our marriage to get away from our families and kind of where we'd spent our youth. I feel like we really matured when we moved away, and it wasn't even far. It was just far enough away to be close to see them on weekends, but not too close. So, we had to make a concerted effort to go see them. It was an hour's drive instead of 5 minutes to our mom's. And having a mom they lived on the opposite ends of town on either side, west and east. And so we were right in the middle, and it just caused for some rough times, when you're that close and you're just newly married. And my husband, he was the first in his family. He's the firstborn, so he was the first married. And another reason I think I wasn't ready is kind of competitive. We were the first ones married, so I wanted us to be the first ones to have a baby, bring the first grandbaby into the world, and again, to just be along with my peers and be able to be pregnant too, and just all the wrong reasons. But anyway, we did move up to this town that we're in now in southern Utah, and we lived actually about 7 miles north of the small town, in an even smaller town that now is a whole community. But at the time, in 1998, it was just a few streets, and we lived up in a dirt hill, up in a field, in a cabin. And it was as rustic of a cabin as you can imagine, just an A-frame that was, it had indoor plumbing, and it had electricity, and that's as far as being livable. That was the only thing that made it separated it from being a glorified fort that you would live in. That's how rustic it was. And that was the last place I wanted to have a baby in, and to have a little toddler running around getting hurt. Or we had mice and scorpions, and there were slats in the logs that you could even see daylight through, and it was just crazy that we lived there. And I could just tell stories after story about the adventures in that cabin, and they were funny. But I also got a full-time job at the bank. I had been working at a bank down in when we first got married as well, but I'd been promoted to a new position up here in this smaller town. And I was able to have full insurance to carry us through while my husband was in school full-time. And he did have a part-time job at a local bank as well, but he's in the computer industry, so his job was different than mine in the financial side. So he ended up going on a trip to Oklahoma, and I didn't want to stay alone in this little house on the prairie. It was kind of scary because there was nothing around us except probably a mile away was the freeway, and that wasn't comforting at all. And so I stayed with my husband's grandparents in the town that was 7 miles south of where we were. And it was closer to my job, so it was kind of convenient to just have to go a block instead of 7 miles, and not that that's a big deal. But anyway, I stayed with them for that week, and there was a night where I had lost count of the days. I stopped keeping track. Like I said, we weren't really taking preventative measures, but I really knew my husband didn't want children at the time. So I kind of just stopped counting the days on the calendar and just focused on my career and doing well there and trying to advance in different positions and learn and grow as much as I could in that. But this one of the nights I was with his grandparents, I just felt different, and I'm like, I don't even remember when my last cycle was, and I didn't really jump to the pregnancy at that time. I just thought I had an IUI, which is I had an infection. And so I made an appointment with the doctor to see if I could get some antibiotics for, did I call it an IUI? That's a fertility treatment. I meant when you have like a urinary tract infection, UTI. So anyway, I went to the doctor and they did a blood test because they wanted to know maybe if I was pregnant, because I didn't know when my last cycle was. And he came back and he said, "You're pregnant." And I was just shocked, and I kind of didn't believe him, and I was confused and just thrilled at the same time, but a little bit worried too, considering where we lived and knowing my husband's position as far as not being ready. He didn't want to be in school full time, and there's just things that people watching will probably laugh and say, like, you have any control. You know, kids will come when they're ready to come. But at the time, we just, he knew we weren't ready, and I was just like, okay, you know, when you're least expecting it, it happens. And so I was just so grateful and relieved that I thought, oh, my body knows how to be pregnant. That was kind of the biggest thought in my mind. And I couldn't wait to tell my husband when I talked to him next. And I didn't get a chance to talk to him and that day, and that night I couldn't sleep. And I was so just overwhelmed, and every thought you can imagine ran through my brain. And then what do you know? I start my period the next day. And I called the doctor and I went back in, and they said, "Oh, you're having a spontaneous abortion. You wouldn't have known you were pregnant. You would have just thought it was a late period, and it happens all the time. And your HCG, the blood test they ran showed the numbers high enough to be considered early pregnancy, and they were going down, which meant that's why I started my period, and it was considered like I said, a spontaneous abortion." And I was just like, what? I had never heard anything like that. They tried to explain to me about the statistics and how common it is, and how half the time people never even know that they were pregnant, and that it just means like the baby, there was an embryo and it tried to attach and it didn't work out, and it just dissolved and you have your period. And I was devastated. I just felt like it was a big joke on my life, and I suffer from depression and anxiety anyway, chemically, and so that was kind of a dark time. And I didn't say much to anybody, but I took some time off of work because I felt sick to my stomach, and I did talk to my husband about it, and then I eventually did tell my family and some people at work, just because it was kind of a traumatic experience for me, and then I never talked about it again. But I did feel some relief because I thought, okay, my body knows how to be pregnant. Now I know I can get pregnant and I don't have to worry about that. It'll happen now. And we'd been married 4 years at this point, and so we knew that we had issues. There was something wrong. But then I worried about, what if I've been having late cycles all this time and having all this happen over and over, and what if I can't carry a child to term, which ultimately was the issue. My body just rejected embryos, and as the furthest along I ever got was after an IVF cycle, and I got to 15 weeks. So we were able to see a little gummy bear baby on the sonogram, and that's the only thing I kept from our IVF days, was that and my HCG, which was the high number that is early pregnancy. Everything else I burned because I was just bitter and angry and frustrated with all that we had gone through. And the other interview I had with Annalise, if you look on my page and see the videos, seeing her charts and her calendars, I really wish I would have saved all of that documentation that we had to use through our cycles, through our fertility treatments. So those of you watching this who are in the midst of that, save it. Even if you get negative and you want to just throw it away, tear it up, shred it, burn it, I know how you feel because I felt the same way. But in retrospect, I really wished I would have saved everything. Just to remember. It's just records that I want to show my girls, this is what we went through to get you kids here. And you didn't come the way I had hoped at the time, but you came, and that's just the way Heavenly Father wanted you to come to our lives. There's different ways that we receive gifts from heaven, and some come through your belly and some come through the front door, and either way, they're our children, just the same. And anyway, I just wanted to share my experience with that awful term, spontaneous abortion, that no one talks about, and because I'd never heard of it, and maybe you guys haven't heard of it either. And bodies just do things. Our bodies are miraculous, and it's just like I mentioned in another video, what it takes to maintain a pregnancy, to get pregnant in the first place, and then to carry it full term is just miraculous. So anyway, I hope you got something out of that. And if you have any questions, comments, or want to add to this, please do so in the comment page, like and subscribe, so you can continue to get notice of my videos. And also, I have an email. It's infertilemama@gmail.com. So if you want to send me a private email and get a discussion or any kind of request for video content, please just send that to me. I would love to get it. And thank you for watching.